The big move. This room probably contains the biggest single mistake in the house. Not in how it was built, but in how it was oriented. The master bedroom originally turned its back on the best view and the sun. Fixing that meant doing something fairly drastic. Flipping the room 180 degrees. And that decision cascaded into structure, joinery, cladding, wardrobes, basically everything. In this episode, I'm focusing on the main move that made that possible. Cutting a new opening and installing the largest window in the house. Planning, design before demolition. Turning a room around isn't just about making a window bigger. It changes how you move through the space, how the furniture works, where storage goes, and how the room feels throughout the day. To make this work, the existing north wall's wardrobes had to go. A new opening had to be built, and the exterior cladding had to be rebuilt properly, not patched. This window is part of a much larger exterior project that's been happening over time, not a one-off upgrade. Part of a bigger exterior project. By the time I got to the master bedroom, I'd already replaced windows and doors in the living room, dining room, kitchen, and entry. In New Zealand, exterior windows aren't standard sizes. Everything is custom ordered. What I learned pretty quickly is that joinery companies are far more competitive when you approach it as a larger package rather than a single window order. So I grouped the remaining windows and doors into one order, 11 windows and one door, ranging from medium to large. This master bedroom unit was the biggest of the lot. Cost and logistics reality check. The total joinery order came in at just under $19,000. It wasn't broken down per unit, but they did provide weight estimates, which made it possible to roughly work out individual costs. Based on that, this window lands around $2,500. I paid 50% up front, and the order arrived 3 months later, exactly as promised. Demo, clearing the way. Before a new window could be framed in, things had to come out. The two existing windows were removed and building underlay was installed to keep the house weathertight. This was where the bigger exterior project kicked off, and new cladding was installed where the windows had been inside. The wardrobes had to stay initially. The new ones needed to be built first so the room could still function. New cabinetry could be installed now that the old windows had been removed. The old wardrobes on the north wall could finally be emptied and demolished. Only then could the real work begin. Framing, opening the wall. I kicked off this project demolishing the wardrobes and wall linings. A new window opening means structural changes. Before touching the framing, I installed props to support the ceiling and roof. Okay, what I'm trying to do here is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 floor joists. So I'm spreading my prop load across them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trusses. I'm trying to spread my load across them with my 2 props in between. That allowed me to open up the wall and install a new lintel sized for the opening. This isn't particularly exciting to watch, but it's the most important part of the whole process. If you get this wrong, nothing that follows matters. There's a freely available standard in New Zealand I follow for creating this lintel, with tables for different scenarios. It's super handy and details it down to the nails required. I have a heavy tile roof and a wide window, so this lintel needs to be quite substantial. I had to mount the laser on the wall, measure the height of where the top of the lintel is going to be, mark it out across the wall there. It's actually really close to the top, like 15 millimeters. I'm just going to have these tiny little pieces of wood. They might just break. I've got to cut through them. I'll be cutting through the nails. I've marked out where my sill trimmer is going to sit and all the way around with the square so that I can cut those and leave all that framing below, which is going to save me so much work, not having to reframe all that stuff that attaches to the roof. I don't think you saw that, and I just dropped that thing on the roof, from there onto the roof, bounced, raised my arm, chipped one of my tiles, bruised my ego. But I did come up with another plan. Once the lintel is installed, I can remove the props. You can already see the amazing view we're going to get. Wrap and flashing prep. I installed the exterior building underlay over the opening to keep it weather tight. I have to organise a mate to help me with the window as it's pretty heavy and awkward. Once I know my mate is on his way, I cut the wrap into the opening and install all the required flexible flashing tapes. Taping done. The butterfly is under at the bottom, butterfly is over at the top. All the way in on the sills. Because this is a direct fix cladding system, a sill tray is also required. And pieces of the cladding packaged. Tape plastic packers on the sill tray lined up where the base of the window has support blocks. On the outside of the wall underlay, I tape plastic spacers to the wall so that the window will land in exactly the right position, allowing the cladding to tuck in behind it later and be sealed properly. I have learned to put tape on the wall underlay first, where I tape on the spacers so that I don't tear up the building underlay when I remove the taped on spacers later. Cladding with my 6mm packers on. 6mm packers to make a 6mm gap for my sealant later. Fast update, sill trays in, nailed behind the flange, generous amount of silicone, black so it's invisible, won't see it. 6mm pieces of cladding behind the sill flashing before fixing it in, packers on front of the sill flashing, create a gap from the window frame. Piece of cladding and packer taped onto the wall underlay. Install, getting the window in. My mate arrived to help me install the window. Shaz wasn't up for this one. Getting it into position is a bit of a trick. I rigged up pulleys to winch it up the scaffold, which was a bit hair-raising. We are going to hoist the window up over there. Ren's going to help me bring it along, and we're just going to chuck a couple of screws in just to hold it in place temporarily. From the scaffolding, we take it across the roof, under the eaves and onto the sill tray. Once we have it sitting in the opening, a temporary screw on each side holds it in place while everything is checked. I then fix it off carefully, shimming each fixing point, making sure the timber reveal wasn't being warped by the fixings. See all my packers as I go along here on all the fixing points. At this point, this is probably my 20th window in the house. The process is pretty dialed. Exterior flashing, cladding, battens. With the window fixed, the head flashing is silicone to the top of the window, nailed in place and taped to the building underlay. The cladding I'm using is a direct replacement for the original fibre cement sheet. The only real change is removing the faux Tudor look and adding extra faux battens to give the sheet cladding a board and batten appearance. Bougie on a budget, you could say. Instead of timber battens, I'm using strips of fibre cement. They should last much better and need less maintenance. Before installing, all the sheets and battens are pre-painted, edges, ends, and a little onto the back, so nothing is left exposed. Battens over a sheet join get proper silicone sealant, including down the sides of the windows where I use masking tape to avoid making a mess. Once everything's installed, the battens are corked and the cladding gets a couple more coats of paint. At that point, the building is sealed back up from the weather. Interior air seals and linings. Inside, I install the required internal air seal. You can use expanding foam here, but I prefer to use silicone. You know for sure it's sealed properly. After lining the walls with new plasterboard and painting, which I'll cover in a separate episode, it's time to finish the inside of the window. Extended windowsill, design detail. I wanted this window to feel like more than just glazing, so I extended the internal windowsill, planting it on top of the existing reveal and making it about twice as deep as before. Not so deep that it interferes with the curtains, but deep enough to lean on. The ends get a nice radius so the curtains won't catch. It's a small move, but it completely changes how the window is used. On a nice day, you can slide it open and just sit there for a moment looking out at the view. That's the whole point. Trim, pre-paint and install. Once everything's fixed, I measure up for trim. Because it's black, I can pre-paint it, install it, and skip caulking to the wall entirely. Any small gaps just read as black trim rather than a shadow gap. The trim is fixed with brad nails, then puttied. Some fixings need multiple coats as the putty shrinks slightly while it dries. Once that's done, I just touch up the paint rather than repainting everything. No masking, no cutting in, saves time and stress and gives a perfect line every time. Scaffolding and sequence. I purchased scaffolding specifically for this project. Doing everything myself while holding down a day job, renting it just didn't really make sense. About $4,500 all up, but I should be able to sell it and recoup at least half or lend it out to mates. I worked my way around the house over a summer, starting on the west and finishing on the north. This master bedroom window was the very last unit to go in. What I realised using the scaffolding was that it was not only safe, but it massively sped up projects that I would have previously done in sections off a ladder. Wrap up, the result. The window is finally done and I'm wrapped with how it's turned out. I've been imagining this change since we bought the house years ago and the result doesn't disappoint. The room now faces the view and the sun, the proportions feel right, and the space finally works the way it always should have. Curtains are still to come, and I'll cover the wardrobe build separately. In the next episode, I'll show how I got rid of the door that used to swing straight into the middle of the room and replaced it with a pocket door to improve circulation. Thanks for watching!